Let me ask you a question. Do you really know who you are? Carl Jung believed that most of us are constantly switching between masks, not out of deception, but out of survival. You're one person at work, another with friends, someone else entirely when you're alone. And the terrifying part? You don't even notice the switch. It happens so smoothly, so silently that you think it's just you, being you. But what if the face you wear isn't yours at all? What if you've spent your whole life playing roles so well, you forgot who's underneath? This video reveals the 3 hidden personas Jung believed shape your daily life without your permission. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. Carl Jung called it the persona, a mask we wear not to deceive, but to survive. The word itself comes from Latin, meaning mask used by an actor. That's no accident. Jung believed that from the earliest days of our lives, we begin shaping ourselves to fit the roles society rewards. The obedient student, the friendly co-worker, the charming date, the reliable son or daughter, each a different version of us, each a persona crafted to meet expectations, avoid punishment, or win approval. But here's the problem. At some point, we forget we're acting. We start believing the mask is the face. We convince ourselves that the person we show to others is who we really are, and slowly, silently, we begin to vanish. Jung warned that this persona is necessary. We can't live in society without it, but the danger arises when it becomes so dominant that we lose all connection to what's underneath. The persona, Jung wrote, is a system of behavior that is partly dictated by society and partly dictated by the individual's desire to conform to society's expectations. It is not the whole self, it's only a fragment. And yet, many people spend their entire lives inside that fragment. They get so good at playing their role, the professional, the comedian, the people pleaser, that they forget they're allowed to change. They forget they were ever more than just a role. And what begins as adaptation becomes imprisonment. You feel it when you're alone, don't you? That quiet restlessness. That sense of having no idea who you are when no one's around to validate you. That unease when you're not being useful or impressive or liked. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because the persona has grown louder than the self. And here's the haunting part. The more approval you get for your mask, the more trapped you become in it. Because now there's something to lose. You've built a life around your performance. To take off the mask feels like social death. But Jung believed that keeping it on for too long leads to a much deeper death, the death of the soul. So how do we free ourselves? First, by noticing. Notice when you're playing a role. Notice when your words aren't quite yours, when your laugh is slightly forced, when your boundaries shrink so someone else feels bigger. Don't judge it, just notice. Because the persona doesn't disappear by force, it softens when seen. It dissolves in the light of awareness, and as it fades, something else begins to emerge. Something deeper, older, and far more alive. But beware that something is not always easy to face, because once the persona is stripped away, you're left with the shadow. Now you probably think the mask is the lie, but Jung believed the real terror begins when you take it off, because what's underneath might be everything you've spent your life avoiding. If the persona is what you show the world, the shadow is everything you don't. According to Jung, every time you tried to be good, kind, polite, or strong, you buried its opposite inside you. All the anger you weren't allowed to express, all the envy you weren't supposed to feel, all the fear you had to mask with a smile. These fragments didn't disappear. They didn't dissolve. They sank into what Jung called the personal unconscious, a place where everything you denied, repressed, or rejected about yourself still lives, waiting. And here's the paradox. The more you suppress it, the more power it gains. The more you ignore it, the more it shapes your life from the shadows. You've seen it, that explosion of rage that came out of nowhere, that passive-aggressive jab you didn't plan, that thrill in someone else's failure, followed by guilt, that envy you can't admit, even to yourself. We all want to be good, but when we build our identity only around goodness, we become blind to everything else that's still inside us. Jung called this identification with the persona and said it's one of the most dangerous forms of self-deception. Because while you think you're pure, righteous, or stable, your repressed shadow is acting out in ways you no longer control. And the world suffers for it. Because repressed shadows don't disappear, they project. You begin to see in others what you refuse to admit in yourself. You demonize people who act the way you wish you could. You overreact to traits that mirror your own disowned ones. You call others selfish, but can't set a boundary. You call others weak, but haven't faced your fear. Jung put it bluntly, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The shadow is not evil. It's human. It's raw. It's the part of you that still wants something real. And here's the truth, Jung believed most people never dare to face. You will never be whole until you integrate your shadow. Because buried in that darkness isn't just pain or shame. There's also power, creativity, vitality, the raw, unfiltered energy of your unlived life. The artist you buried to become responsible, the protector you silenced to stay soft, the rebel you rejected to be accepted. All of them live in the shadow. And if you dare to turn toward it, not with judgment, but with compassion, you'll find the parts of yourself you thought were lost forever. But there's one more twist. Even if you integrate your shadow, even if you remove the mask, you might still be lost. Because Jung believed there's one more self, one more hidden persona that's harder to face than any shadow. It's not what you show the world. It's not what you hide. It's who you think you are. You've faced your mask, you've faced your darkness, but what if the final illusion is your idea of you? You think you know who you are. You have a name, a past, a set of likes, dislikes, memories, beliefs. But Jung, and many thinkers who came after him, warned that this you is not the whole you. It's a third persona, not the one you show, not the one you repress, but the one doing the looking, the one who says, I am. This is the ego, your conscious identity. And it's the most seductive persona of them all, because it doesn't feel like a mask. It feels like you. The ego gives you stability. It gives you direction, values, clarity. But it also tricks you into believing that who you are is finished, defined, solid. You tell yourself, I'm just not creative. I'm the smart one. I'm always anxious. I'm not like them. And slowly, almost without noticing, you shrink your infinite potential into a small box of certainty. You become a prisoner of your own story. But the soul is not a story. It's not a resume. It's not a bundle of preferences. It's alive, changing, unknown. Jung believed that the path to wholeness begins when you realize that the ego is not the captain of the ship. It's just the passenger who thinks it is. It doesn't know the whole terrain. It only knows what it wants to see, and it fears change. Because change means death to the story it's built. To accept a new truth is to let the old you die. This is why spiritual traditions talk about ego death. But Jung didn't think the ego needed to be destroyed. It needed to be decentered, to become humble, flexible, curious. Instead of saying, I am this, you begin to say, I am becoming. And in that moment, something opens. You stop clinging to a fixed identity. You start listening to the parts of you you once ignored. The child who wanted to paint, the teenager who wanted to scream, the adult who secretly longs to rest. And then, in rare, quiet moments, you feel something strange. You're not trying to be someone. You're not performing, fixing, projecting. You're just here, present, aware, open, not as the mask, not as the shadow, not even as the ego, but as something older, wider, deeper. Jung called it the self. And he said that the goal of life is not to be good, not to be liked, not even to be successful, but to become yourself. To slowly return to the totality of who you are, not by adding more, but by becoming less false, by shedding every false persona until only the truth remains. But there's a cost, because the moment you start walking this path, you will feel alone. What happens when you take off the final mask and nobody recognizes you? When your truth costs you the love, approval, or identity you once lived for? If you're ready to face the cost of becoming, stay with me. The greatest paradox of becoming your true self is this. You must walk a path that only you can walk, and for a long time, No one will walk it with you. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he never said it would feel like a privilege while it's happening. In fact, it often feels like loss, because when you begin the process of individuation, Jung's term for psychological and spiritual wholeness, you start leaving behind everything that made you feel accepted, but wasn't truly you. You stop laughing at jokes you don't find funny. You no longer pretend to be confident when you're drowning inside. You can't tolerate the same shallow conversations or surface-level goals. And little by little, the world you built around your mask begins to crumble. People pull away. Your circle gets smaller. Some call you selfish. Others call you lost. But the truth is, you're just not playing the role anymore. And that's terrifying, because roles make you feel safe. They tell you where you belong. They tell others how to treat you. They give you rules, expectations, rewards. Without the role, who are you? This is the stage where many turn back. They reach into their closet, find the old mask, and put it back on. Not because they like it, but because it's better than being misunderstood. But if you stay, if you let the silence settle, if you breathe through the ache of disconnection, something changes. You start meeting people who don't want your mask. You start hearing your own voice more clearly. You start making choices that feel right, even if they look wrong to others. And for the first time, you realize you were never really alone. You were just surrounded by people who only loved your disguise. The loneliness was not a punishment. It was a doorway, a passage into a life that fits your soul, not just your persona. But even then, the journey doesn't end, because the self is not a destination. It's a direction. It evolves, it reveals, it challenges, and it demands that you die 1,000 small deaths along the way. The death of who you were yesterday, the death of the dream that wasn't yours, the death of the lie that kept you safe. Every day, something must be let go, not in bitterness, but in love. Because what's waiting beneath it all isn't emptiness, it's truth. And once you touch it, even for a second, you'll never settle for anything less. But here's the final twist Jung never stopped warning us about. Even the self can become a mask. So how do you stay real in a world that keeps pulling you back into illusion? The answer is simple and brutal. You've walked through the fire, you've peeled off the persona, you've endured the silence, the judgment, the confusion, and now you've begun to feel something sacred, the presence of your deeper self. But Carl Jung gives one final warning. Every step closer to the self also increases the danger of inflation. In simpler terms, the moment you find your true self, you're at risk of making that your new persona. You go from, "I don't know who I am," to "I know exactly who I am." And that certainty can harden. It can become an identity that clings instead of one that flows. Instead of wearing the confident man's mask, you now wear the awakened man's mask. Instead of the people pleaser, you're now the truth teller, harsh and unbending. Instead of hiding in fear, you now hide behind your shadow work, your books, your depth. And suddenly, the self is no longer alive. It's just another costume, but this time, you think it's real. This is what Jung called the danger of ego inflation. You mistake the vastness of the self for your personal greatness. You confuse your deeper insights with superiority, and without realizing it, you start performing again, but now for the applause of your inner audience. You start telling yourself, "I'm more conscious than them. I've done the work they haven't. I see what others are too blind to face." But now the persona wears robes of wisdom. Now the mask looks like authenticity, and that's far more dangerous, because it's almost indistinguishable from the real thing. So how do you stay grounded? How do you continue the journey without turning yourself into a trophy? Jung's answer was humility, not fake humility, not the kind that says, "Oh, I'm not special," while secretly thinking you're chosen, but the real kind, the kind that knows you're always a beginner, the kind that knows your unconscious will always be larger than your conscious mind, the kind that doesn't cling to being healed, transformed, or authentic. Because the moment you claim to be awake, you've likely fallen asleep again. This doesn't mean you discard everything you've learned. It means you hold it lightly. You keep moving. You stay curious. You understand that growth isn't a mountaintop. It's a spiral. You circle back to old wounds, see new angles in familiar shadows, and allow yourself to evolve again and again. You don't become the self once. You become it daily, through choice, through attention, through honesty. And that's the paradox. The deeper you go, the more aware you become of how far you still have to go. But that's not depressing, it's liberating. Because now there's nothing left to prove, no mask left to wear, no image left to protect. Just life, raw, wild, and alive, meeting you in every moment. And you, finally able to meet it back. If this video moved something in you, if it helped you recognize the masks you wear or the truth you're seeking beneath them, then you're not alone. There's a whole community of souls walking this same strange, sacred path. Subscribe, comment, and join us. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.